Thank you so much for coming. It's great to have you all here. We're really excited about our program tonight. I think you will like it too. Tonight's program is Truly Great Reads. And this evening, we're looking at the various ways that authors have explored gratitude. The month of November is the perfect time to share books that have helped us to notice and recognize the people, the circumstances, and the hard work that have combined to make our life what it is today. Some of our selections are moving, some are inspirational, and some are instructional, but all are truly great reads from our wonderful nonfiction collection. We hope you too will be grateful for having discovered some super true titles to snuggle up with this season of thankfulness and thoughtfulness and love. Before we start, if you haven't already, please help yourself to some donuts and cider. Get some more if you want. You guys haven't gotten any yet. Go on. There's time, plenty of time. And you can even get up while we're talking. We don't mind at all. And when we're done, feel free to help yourself to one of the books on the wall there. If it's not on the wall, it means somebody else already grabbed it. You can take it home and enjoy it, and we think you'll really enjoy them. And if any point in the program you can't hear us, please ask us to speak up. Tonight's presenters are reference librarians Wendy, Ann, Lauren, and me, Sue. And we're doing what we love most, helping you to discover your next truly great read. Enjoy. My first selection is a book that's been in our collection a long, long time. So I'm grateful to have discovered it myself. It's written by Katie Couric. You surely know her. She's a remarkable journalist, interviewer, and news anchor, an enthusiastic student of life who's always been generous about sharing what she's up to, what she's learning, and what's important to her. Katie Couric is just an all-around highly intelligent, accomplished woman. The best advice I ever got, Lessons from Extraordinary Lives, is her first book, written way back in 2011. It's a collection of essays contributed by more than 100 extraordinary Americans, each giving their own personal best answer to this question: what matters most to you? What one thing have you learned in your whole long life on earth that could help others lead a truly deeply meaningful life? Their brief essays are breathtaking in scope, in honesty, and in richness. The diversity, the wisdom, and their topics are exciting and captivating, as are the people who wrote them. Every essay in here, and there are more than 100, is a reminder of what's important in life and how we can all better live our lives every day. We feel all the writers' thankfulness for having been handed the life they've been dealt. And if you're like me, you'll be grateful to Katie for having assembled these golden nuggets for us to read. They are beautifully, succinctly written, every one a gem. How did this treasure come to be born? Couric's inspiration was the challenge of giving a meaningful commencement address to college students about to embark upon their adult life. To do that, she approached about 30 people she'd interviewed over the past years and asked them, what's the most important thing you've learned about living a meaningful life? The wisdom in their thoughtful, generous replies was far too good to share with just one graduating class. So she decided to enlarge her request and ask more people from all walks of life to briefly share the most important thing they've learned about living a life that matters. She asked the question of political leaders, of visionaries, of people in business and in arts, and folks involved in entertainment, sports, and philanthropy. The result was this book. It introduces readers to more than 100 immensely interesting people. Some of these people I had never known anything about before, but every single one of them would be worthy of investigating and learning a lot more about. All the folks interviewed by Couric have fascinating, interesting lives. As you can imagine, their essays cover a huge range of human experience. They speak to the importance of working hard, doing your best, even on the little things, the importance of tenacity, stick-to-itiveness, staying with your job even when it's really hard, and the importance of working towards the betterment of something bigger than yourselves, the importance of courage. and sometimes the importance of faking it till you make it. Katie Couric's own challenge was to listen better to her own inner voice and to follow her own personal passions. She donated all the proceeds from her book to a Dream Keepers program that paid for underserved students to go to college. Because as Couric put it, a scholarship says, "I believe in you," and helps young people realize their full potential. So someday maybe their stories could appear in a book like this too. Each and every contributed essay alludes to its author's extreme gratefulness for having had the opportunity to live the life they've lived and to have grown through their immense challenges and crises. A few of the contributors are Steven Spielberg, Madeleine Albright, Melinda Gates, Ken Burns, Salman Rushdie, Wynton Marsalis, Larry King, Michael J. Fox, Meryl Streep, Condoleezza Rice, and many more. The honesty of these contributing authors, their big-hearted, friendly generosity with us, the readers, has stayed with me for a long, long time. I hope you'll pick this one up soon, too. My last image is Katie Couric today, 11 years after The Best Advice I Ever Got was published, still as busy as ever, advocating for things that truly matter. My next book is Mitch Albom's Finding Chica, a small little record of the author's own thoughts and deeply imagined experiences. Gratitude swells from the very pores of this beautifully written journal. I can hardly talk about it without being overwhelmed with gratefulness that I discovered it, which is exactly the way author Mitch Albom feels about having a little Haitian toddler named Chica enter his life. But I'm getting ahead of the story here. The story begins back in 2010, when author Mitch Albom traveled to Have Faith Haiti Mission and Orphanage a few days after a terrible earthquake devastated Haiti's capital and crumbled great swaths of its structures. Albom, a newspaper columnist, feature writer, and Detroit radio talk show host, first went to the mission right after a worried pastor called Albom's radio show and told listeners that he was worried about the fate of a Haitian orphanage that he had volunteered at. Since the earthquake, he'd been unable to reach the orphanage or anyone at it, and it was fearful for the kids. He was afraid it had fallen like so much else had in Haiti. The tale troubled Albom. So with the help of a congressman and the American military, he was granted permission to charter a plane down to Haiti to take him, the concerned pastor who had called, and some volunteers down to Port-au-Prince, Haiti, because no commercial airlines even flew to Haiti back in 2010. When the travelers reached the orphanage, they were relieved to find it still standing, but it was decrepit. And even worse than what you see here, see in that picture, which I just moved, that even worse than that, and worse than the insides that you're seeing there, is that it was overrun with desperate people in dire need of everything. They were homeless because of the earthquake. They needed shelter, food, and water. These images were from Mitch Albom's actually own website. They were taken in January 2010 when he first went down there. The wall was propped up with beams. The kids had to walk past that wall on their way to the bathroom, such as it was, but you can see what the bathrooms looked like. It was just basically horrible, nothing. The kitchen was just a pot on a fire, you know, like a gas burning fire. And the living room was just a couch, you know, and not much else. It was such a disaster of a place. When Mitch returned to Detroit, he wrote about the destitution he'd seen in his newspaper column and asked his readers for help. The response was overwhelming. 9 trips and a lot of muscles, grit, donations, and elbow grease later, Mitch and teams of Detroit volunteers that he had recruited had built and installed bunk beds, indoor plumbing, indoor bathrooms, a kitchen with running water, and a separate 3-room schoolhouse on the site of the orphanage, now much improved. The place had so captured Mitch Albom's heart that he began commuting there monthly from Detroit, which was 700 miles away, one way. He established relationships with volunteers and with the children who called it home. And when the pastor who had inspired the work in the first place said he could no longer afford to run it, Mitch Albom officially agreed to take on the job. He knew he'd be able to round up donors and money. So just like that, he accepted the job of running this orphanage located in an impoverished neighborhood, in an impoverished area of a desperately needy country. The Haitian parents who had brought their children there had nothing. They gave them away because they wanted something better for their children. The orphanage offered something priceless to the parents. The Half-Faith Haiti mission offered hope and boundless love for their children who came to call it home. So back to what the book's about. In 2013, a brave little girl named Chica arrived. Chica was only 3 days old when the earthquake that destroyed Port-au-Prince leveled her 2-room home. 2 rooms. 3 years later, 3-year-old Chica, now orphaned, arrived at Half-Faith Haiti Mission Orphanage. Mitch immediately noticed that she had something medically wrong. Whatever it was distorting her facial muscles. But despite her condition, Chica was filled with spunkiness and joy. She soon became Mitch Albom's everything. The deeply compassionate man embarked on a quest to find out what was wrong. When she was ultimately diagnosed still in Haiti, Mitch was determined to find a cure for the strange malignant brain tumor that had invaded her skull. But a pediatric brain tumor was something no doctor in Haiti knew how to deal with. So Mitch flew her back to his Detroit home, being sure that American doctors would soon be able to set Chica well, and he would be able to bring her back. But despite the best efforts of hundreds of medical professionals around the whole world, because he took her everywhere, they could not eradicate the tumor. No spoiler here. We find out on the very first page of this beautiful story that Chica died in 2017. She was 6 years old. Finding Chica is Albom's journal of life with Chica. He begins to write it when, uncannily, Chica's visits begin in 2018. 2018 is 1 year after little Chica had passed away. The essence of finding Chica is the conversations our author has with her spirit, as if 6-year-old Chica, in full health and vigor, is in his writing studio being 6 and being silly right in front of him right now. In Albom's mind, the visits are vivid, as are the conversations he recounts. He tells us on the very first page that Chica passed away a year ago, so the visits have to be imagined, but his telling is so wonderful that the visits are 100% real in our minds too. The very first page of Finding Chica, before the story begins, is A.A. Milne's wonderful poem from Winnie the Pooh, Now We Are 6. When I was 1, I had just begun. When I was 2, I was mostly new. When I was 3, I was hardly me. When I was 4, I was not much more. When I was 5, I was just alive. But now I am 6. I am clever as clever. So I think I'll be 6 now, forever and ever. Chica's imagined visits to Mitch are where this heartwarming, life-affirming story begins. And as you'll see when you read it, Mitch Albom's gratitude for having found Chica is the very core and the very essence of this book. I am so grateful to have found it and Chica, and for having the opportunity to share it with you today. Now, I'd like to bring up Randy.
Thank you, Sue. My first book is Gratitude by Oliver Sacks, which is right on the nose for a book talk about gratitude. Sacks is the author of Awakenings, which was made into a movie with Robin Williams starring. He also wrote An Anthropologist on Mars, Hallucinations, and what I believe is the best title of a book ever, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. He's a neurobiologist, and he makes the science accessible, poignant, and gently humorous. Sacks died in 2015 at the age of 82 from a melanoma in his eye. In the 2 years prior to his death, he wrote 4 essays celebrating his life. And this epigraph is basically the theme of the book, that he was going to live every last drop of his life. The book is comprised of 4 essays. The first one is Mercury. He wrote that to commemorate his 80th birthday. Since the age of 11, he linked his age to the atomic number of elements on the periodic table. So when he was 80, he was Mercury. And this book, this essay celebrates the pleasures of old age while also acknowledging the frailties that come along with it. His second essay is My Own Life, which was written days after his terminal diagnosis. It shows an overwhelming appreciation of a life well lived. The third essay is he returns to his favorite My Periodic Table, and it recounts his lifelong love of this chart, and he ties it into his mortality. And as you can see, this is actually a picture of his wallet, and he carried a picture of the periodic table in it. And the last essay is Sabbath. He wrote this 2 weeks before his death, and in it he examines faith, family, a meaningful life, and achieving peace and rest. And it wasn't until yesterday that I realized that Sabbath is the day of rest. This book is only 45 pages long. Slight book, but beautiful and significant. You can gobble it down in one sitting, or in this busy season, if you can find 5 or 10 minutes to take a break, you can savor one essay. My next book is Option B by Sheryl Sandberg and Adam Grant. Sheryl Sandberg is the former chief operating officer of Facebook, and she's the author of Lean In. I chose this book because top of mind right now is all of the stuff going on with social media, with the shenanigans of Elon Musk and Twitter, and the challenges that Facebook is now facing. And I felt kind of left out because I hadn't read her other book, Lean In. This book is all about what to do when life dashes your plans. For Sandberg, that meant, or for Sandberg, it was when her much-loved husband, David Goldberg, died at the age of 47 from a sudden cardiac arrhythmia while they were vacationing in Mexico. All of a sudden, she was faced, here's David, sorry. All of a sudden, she was faced with a new normal. What was she going to do? Her plan A had disappeared, and now she had to come up with an option B. This book is a journey through her grief and how she built resilience, how she developed her plan B. Interestingly enough, it's her personal experiences, she studies, and she quotes a lot of famous people with inspirational thoughts. Some of the things she suggested were, look at the worst case scenario. I thought that was a strange suggestion, but someone had suggested to her, think about what would have happened if your husband had this cardiac arrhythmia and he was driving your children. they all could have died in a tragic accident. So she became thankful that he died in the way he did. And I have to admit that after I read this book, I started using that technique, and it is a very comforting technique because all of a sudden, the things that you're facing are not huge. It gives you perspective and it gives you gratitude. She also stresses the importance of the daily acknowledgement of gratitude. For her family, they have a ritual at dinner of saying the best part of their day, the worst part of their day, and then they added on what they were most grateful for. She also suggests every week creating a list of what went well so that you dwell on the positives rather than the negative. This is basically a guide on how to build strength. It's very helpful. I hope I haven't made it sound too depressing and academic, but there's hope in it, and it's really a joyful book. My last book is 365 Thank Yous by John Kralik. This one I picked up because it reminded me of the horrendous battles I had with my mother as a child over writing thank you notes for gifts. I always felt that writing thank you notes was a horrendous task, and it took me away from enjoying my gifts. It's only as an adult that I see how important thank you notes are to both the giver of the gift and the recipient. 2007 was a really bad year for John Kralik. The law firm that he had founded was in financial trouble and had lost its lease. He was mired in his second divorce. He had used all of his savings to pay his employees. He was living in a shoddy apartment that was so poorly insulated that he had to sleep on the floor underneath the wall air conditioning unit to escape the heat of the Pasadena summers. His girlfriend broke up with him, and he was out of shape and in poor health. New Year's Day, alone, he decided to hike the mountains above Pasadena. While on a 3-mile hike, he got lost, he got tired, he was worried about it becoming dark and was fearful of falling into a ravine and not surviving the night. While he was there, reflecting on his pitiful life, he heard a voice saying, "Until you learn to be grateful for the things you have, you will not receive the things you want." Profound. Made him think of his grandfather, who, when he was younger, promised him a silver dollar every year if he wrote a thank you note for the gift. The first year he received a silver dollar and wrote the required note. The second year he received a silver dollar and skipped the note, and that was the last silver dollar he got. So with that in mind, he decided that the best way to acknowledge the things that he was grateful for was to write thank you notes. Also, he had a box of expensive stationery at his office that had the address of his current offices printed on the envelope. And since they had lost the lease, he was going to have to use them up, or else they would be unusable. So he decided that he would write 365 thank you notes, one for each day of the year. He decided they would be handwritten and they would be short. He wrote his sons, his daughter, his former girlfriend, friends, the manager of his apartment, the woman who fostered the cat that he adopted, his attorney, the judicial appointment board that denied him a judgeship, clients who paid bills, a Starbucks barista, his previous boss, his estranged sister, his former sister-in-law, and his doctor. When he went through all of those people, he still had a number of thank you notes to write to reach his goal. So he started what he called extreme thank yous. And those were mostly for people who managed to find the things that he mislaid, and he mislaid a lot of things. He found that the thank you notes calmed him and focused him. And when he was feeling down, he looked at the spreadsheet that he kept record of all of the notes that he wrote. And that reminded him of all the things that he had to be grateful in his life. While I was reading this book, I received a thank you note from the newest member of our library board, thanking me for my 15 years of service with the library. And like many of the people that Kralik wrote, I saved my note and I keep it in my desk. So, I think I skipped some things here. Yeah, thank you notes. Okay. So if the concept of writing thank you notes appeals to you, we have other books too, the Thank You Project, and I Want to Thank You. They choose a different number of notes to write in a year or in a time frame. And they also talk about the different ways of writing notes. They tend to be a little longer than Kralik's, but whatever works for you. So in a way, they are instructional as well as inspirational. Thank you. And now I will turn it over to Anne.
Did his life get better?
Yes, his life did get better. He actually is a judge now in California, and
Thank you, Wendy, and I'm Anne, and I've chosen two books to present tonight, and my first is an autobiography. In the countrywide commotion of the 1960s anti-war movement, a 14-year-old boy in Highland Park was skipping classes and hanging out with his garage bandmates and taking in the wisdom of The Who, Jimi Hendrix, the Beach Boys, Led Zeppelin. And Gary, in Grateful American, Gary Sinise describes his somewhat troubled high school life, including partying and failing grades, until one day when a teacher walked up to him and his scruffy bandmates and suggested they try out for the gang member roles in the school's production of A West Side Story. Well, Sinise auditioned, got the part, and was hooked. The first mention of gratitude in Grateful American is from this time in his life. And there it is. I'd been handed a fresh start and I felt hopeful and grateful. I realized theater had become my second chance at life, and the second chance caused me to understand I had a lot to be grateful for. Sinise acted in one play after another in high school. After graduation, while several of his friends went off to college, he set out to present his first theater production at a nearby church. 2 years later, he and two friends incorporated the Steppenwolf Theater Company. Over time, this company would give a start to such names as John Malkovich, Dennis Farina, John Mahoney, and Laurie Metcalf. Sinise provides insights to the actor's craft and the theater business, including how much it takes to put on a production before rehearsals even start. But the heart of this book centers around gratitude for the U.S. Armed Services and the sacrifices of our veterans. Thanks to his role as Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump, Gary Sinise is also a big name actor now. This role set him on another path as well. It was because of Lieutenant Dan that the Disabled American Veterans honored him with the Commander's Award. Eventually, he and his Lieutenant Dan band were performing at USO concerts all around the world. As he says, I knew something was big, but something big was shifting inside of me. A transformation was now underway. I was no longer primarily an actor. I was becoming an advocate. My job was to carry the nation's gratitude to the troops. Sinise raises gratitude again and again in his autobiography, even when he discusses hard times, and there were plenty of them for him and his family. Sinise acknowledges and is thankful for all the help he receives in getting through them. The second half of the book focuses on what prompted him to begin his campaign of gratitude for the military veterans. From volunteer work with the USO and visiting hospitals, through the development of the Gary Sinise Foundation. I found his stories about his hospital visits and the USO tours to be very moving and sometimes funny. And I was amused by the fact that his offer to join the USO went unanswered until one day he told them, oh, by the way, I was the guy who played Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump. They called him back the next day. CSI fans, well, CSI New York fans might also be interested in how his experiences have shaped his character's backstory. Sinise's storytelling and pacing makes Grateful American an entertaining and an effortless read. But my next book is not quite as effortless a read, is still a very important one. Thank You for Your Service by Washington Post writer and Pulitzer Prize-winning author David Finkel. It's a follow-up to his previous book, The Good Soldiers, which describes one battalion's deployment in Iraq in 2007. But it's not necessary to read The Good Soldiers before you read Thank You for Your Service. Thank You for Your Service chronicles what David Finkel calls the after-war, the difficult and often painful process of returning home and reintegrating into American society that some of the soldiers and their spouses face. According to Finkel, there are studies that suggest that 20 to 30% of the 2 million Americans sent to fight in Iraq and Afghanistan have come back with post-traumatic stress disorder or traumatic brain injury. Finkel follows one of the soldiers from the 216 Infantry Battalion, which was the subject of his previous book. He creates a series of interconnected stories centering around Adam Schumann, who was one of the most respected and admired soldiers in the battalion and is now suffering from PTSD. Finkel has a way of presenting mental unraveling as reportable fact and giving a portrayal of precisely what it's like to live with PTSD or traumatic brain injury. He puts the reader into the mindset of his subjects in a way that creates sympathy. These soldiers have names and families and bad habits and hopes. Their new battle consists of readjusting to civilian life while also dealing with the demons they brought back from war. This work of nonfiction will give you a better understanding of what war costs some of our soldiers who do the fighting. It's told in concise and unsentimental prose and includes excerpts from some of the soldiers' journals, medical records, emails, and texts without censoring the language. So, as a warning, the language is sometimes crude. These stories will help give you a new meaning to the cost of service and to giving thanks. So, if you are looking for a good Veterans Day read next week, I hope you give one of these a try. So now I'll turn it over to Lauren.
Essays are their own experience, neither the shared dream of the novel nor the oceanic waves of knowledge brought by longer nonfiction works. Some are quick, intense bursts of drama or recounting a particular time or place. Others crack open the author's life like a geode. Anne Patchett's latest offers all of these, plus staggering commentary on her own writing and how she got to be who and what she is. The title essay deals with how Suki, who painted the images on the covers and happens to be Tom Hanks' personal assistant, came to live with Patchett and her husband while taking part in a clinical trial. She doesn't shy from writing about the pandemic, but it isn't centered here. It's merely part of all the other tumultuous happenings, transformed like light through a prism. A brief, So there's that one, and there's this one. My apologies. Things to look forward to. 52 Large and Small Joys for Today and Every Day by Sophie Blackall. Melds the pleasure of a picture book with brief musings on the pleasures of life. Doing equally well for those who prefer to open a book to a random page and those who read cover to cover. The author is also the illustrator, and her foreword plainly lays out her impetus and choice to find the joys in life during lockdown. I also have a selection of poetry books, mostly on the lighter side. Mary Oliver's work tends to be contemplative, focusing on fully experiencing the moment captured. We also have a number of her other books. You may have seen her work as well on social media. It did at one point go viral. And if you're looking for similar authors, you can try Sydney Lee, Wendell Berry, or Emily Dickinson. Lin-Manuel Miranda is a name that some of you may be familiar with from his work on Hamilton, Moana, and other productions. This collection is light, affirmative, and collected from his Twitter posts, most written before he came to fame. Again, it's one where it's very easy to just flip open a random page and see what you think. How to Love the World is an anthology with a range of writers, embracing the array of experiences and emotions. Many of these writers also have solo books and chapbooks, which are small poetry collections. It welcomes the reader, regardless of mood or reading style, to spend a moment or more seeing the world through other eyes. Thank You is an anthology of poetry from our youth collection, also on gratitude. Like the previous book, it offers a little something for everyone. In addition to the poems and illustrations, under each poem is its form, sestina, quatrain, echo, etc., with further notes in the back. Whether you simply want a book to share with the children in your life or an approachable, quick read, this one fits like a glove. This wraps up our slate of books. If you want to put any of them on hold, you can call us, email us, or go to our website, or come in and simply ask. We have also moved on to a new and improved library app. This one is more integrated with our offerings. And this, of course, is only a small selection of the many books that we have added to the collection on a regular basis, in addition to all the numbers from past years. Come on in, check them out. You can always find one of us at the reference desk or one of our colleagues, and we would be happy to help you find something. We also have a small goodie for you, courtesy of the Friends of the Library. Those bundles of books on the table are free for you to choose from.